Today is Wednesday, August 19th, 2026. This is a quick start from CBN News. I'm Dan Andros. Iran threatens to go on the offensive. We'll have that top story and more on today's podcast, where we bring you news from a Christian perspective. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating. You can email us, quickstartpodcast@cbn.org. Glad you're with us, getting through the news of the day. With me today, CBN's Goins-Phillips. On the focus story tray, directors ditch J.K. Rowling's HBO series over her views on men and women.
This has become, Dan, just a rinse and repeat story, but yeah, we're going to get into the latest. J.K. just can't seem to not keep taking these hits, but she's not backing down either. So anyway, we'll talk about it in a minute.
All right, details on that coming up in a minute. And then on the main thing, peaceful pro-lifers arrested outside the Alamo. We'll have the details on that coming up on the main thing. And we are going to go to the news in 90 seconds now. And the U.S. Iran ceasefire is officially over, and Tehran is now threatening to go on the offensive. The 60-day agreement expired earlier this week without a new deal. President Trump says Iran wants an agreement, but he won't accept one that fails to guarantee Tehran cannot obtain a nuclear weapon. Iranian official says the regime is preparing to escalate in the Strait of Hormuz and across the region, shifting from defensive operations to what he called fully offensive moves. Iran has reportedly spent the ceasefire rebuilding its missile and drone capabilities. And a Minnesota man, once honored by the state as a, quote, outstanding refugee, end quote, is now accused of taking part in a $1 million Medicaid fraud scheme with an alleged connection to a sex trafficking operation. Salman Ahmed Elmi faces 8 criminal counts for allegedly helping bill Medicaid for more than $1 million in fraudulent services. Prosecutors also allege 2 people involved in the scheme were connected to a sex trafficking ring involving brothels. The Minnesota Department of Human Services, which oversees Medicaid payments, gave Elmi an Outstanding Refugee Entrepreneurship Award back in 2021. Those are just some of today's top headlines. You can check out more stories over at cbnnews.com. And Trey, this latest story with Minnesota, they are just rife with fraud. That people keep finding fraud lurking under every corner, every rock, wherever. It's just everywhere, it seems, in Minnesota. And a couple of things stand out to me with this refugee. Why is there an Outstanding Refugee Award? It seems like one of those things that shouldn't be like, well, we've got so many refugees around, we need to come up with an award for the best one. It just seems like that shouldn't be something we have on file. Shouldn't even have a need for it, but apparently they do in Minnesota. And then the guy you pick turns out to be a fraudster. It's just, you can't make this stuff up.
Well, I mean, setting aside the obvious issues with illegal immigration and all of the fraud that we've covered, whether it's in Minnesota or elsewhere, I think what is so broken about the left's view is constantly categorizing people. It's like, well, you need to be the best in this group, and then we have to have the best, black person in this group, and then the best whatever. And I think it's just a further siloing human beings from each other and othering other people, which is interesting because it's the left that's like, we're all about don't other, individuals. Let's come together. But really all they're doing, it seems, is constantly dividing. And also I completely agree with you. Why is this even an award that's being given out? And if you're going to give out such a silly award, wouldn't you put in a little bit more effort to make sure, oh shoot, I can't believe we nominated a criminal. On top of just being a criminal for being here, maybe illegally, we also nominated them, and they've done this other crime too. So, yeah, Minnesota can't seem to stop stepping in it when it comes to this stuff, it seems.
Yeah, it really does. And so we'll keep updating on that story and more. Of course, the Iran story and the escalations there. We'll see what happens. Our team in Israel with Chris Mitchell will be reporting on that, of course, and we'll give you all the updates there. And you can check out the CBN News YouTube channel to get the latest information on that from Chris and Joshua Swanson and the whole team there. All right, going to go to the focus story now. And J.K. Rowling Getting grief again for apparently holding basic views. Why are two directors now refusing to work on HBO's upcoming Harry Potter series?
Yeah, well, to tip the hat on this one, it's two self-identified queer directors, so you can probably figure out where this is going. But Ali Panku and Kate Herron, they both are publicly rejecting now opportunities to direct upcoming episodes of HBO's Harry Potter series, kind of rebooting the old movies but retelling the story in show format instead of movie format because of J.K. Rowling's, as you said, normal views on sexuality and on gender. Panku, whose credits includes work on Black Mirror and another show called The Great, she shared a text conversation she had with her agent in which she emphatically rejected the opportunity to work with J.K. Rowling, saying in a later message that she didn't want to, quote, fund what she considers, quote unquote, transphobia. And then the other woman, Heron, she was one of the directors of Marvel's Loki, or Disney's Loki series, which is a Marvel Cinematic Universe hero. And she also has worked on Doctor Who. She said that she was actually approached Dan twice about the opportunity to work with J.K. Rowling on this HBO series. And both times she said no, which is funny seeing these two directors wearing this as this enormous badge of honor when really working with J.K. Rowling and being a part of an HBO series would, for most directors, I think, be like a crowning achievement in their career. But because they're taking this big stand, they're very proud of the fact that they are turning down probably millions of dollars and a lot of clout to work with one of, I would say, arguably, if we're just looking at sales and fame, one of the most renowned novelists and content creators of the modern era.
I guess you can't put a price tag on virtue signaling, but for those who might not remember, what has J.K. Rowling said about the trans issue?
Yeah, so really it's been years since all of this reached a boiling point because, believe it or not, 2020 was now 6 years ago, which is hard to believe. The COVID pandemic started 6 years ago, so it's in the rearview mirror for many of us, but apparently not for these directors who are still holding on to, I guess, their hurt feelings. Because Rowling has been hit time and time and time again by the progressive left for her criticism of transgender activists and transgender ideology. Really, she is pretty progressive, I think, to most Christians and most conservatives. I think that J.K. Rowling we would not necessarily, if you identify yourself as a conservative, you would not necessarily feel that J.K. Rowling is one of you, but she has found this odd camaraderie, I think, with a lot of conservatives when it comes to this issue, because she said it's fine if you want to identify as transgender, it's fine if you want to have as an adult whatever sexual identity you want to have, but women's sports, much like Sophie Cunningham, she said women's spaces, whether that's sports, locker rooms, whatever it is, they should be protected. We shouldn't be allowing men identifying as women to participate in women's sports because the only ones that are being hurt by that are women. Which seems to be a pretty commonsensical view to have. And she has consistently, since 2020, whenever she's approached on that issue, it's not like she's out there being an activist and this is what she dedicates her time and resources to. J.K. Rowling is first and foremost an author, and she creates content like films and TV series. So that's what she, spends the bulk of her time doing. But when these issues reach, the cultural zeitgeist, she has sounded off on them. But really, she's just taken a pretty, I think, down the middle, logical position on this. If you're an adult, identify however you want to, do whatever you want to with your own body, but do not force women, especially on this issue, do not force women and girls to have to be subjugated to your decisions, especially when it potentially puts them in harm's way or unfairly disadvantages them in competitive situations.
Yeah, and obviously she's not really caved to the mob in the past on this, and I'm assuming this time, how has she stood her ground?
Yeah, so she is yet again not backing down at all. She hasn't responded specifically to this case, at least not yet. She may in the days and weeks to come, but because she has done so in the past, but she has not yet sounded off on these two directors publicly saying that they don't want to work with Rowling. But most recently, she actually returned a human rights award after the organization criticized her position. An organization had previously given her an award, and then in 2025 they distanced themselves from her, saying that her views are terrible. We don't at all endorse anything. So she said, "Fine, you don't want anything to do with me. I don't want anything to do with you. In fact, just take your award back. I don't need it whatsoever." So that's what she said recently, and she's done a lot of work to raise awareness for women who are in vulnerable situations. And she's talked about instances in which this isn't just a sports issue. This is an issue that potentially puts women in significant harm's way as women who have been victims of sexual assault in the past and are seeking safety and security, maybe in domestic violence shelters, and then come to find out that there are transgender identifying males in these shelters. She said that is a significant issue and a breach of trust for these women who are seeking escape from men who have been violent against them in the past. Not to suggest all men are violent, obviously, but you can see how that would be a bit jarring and certainly a violation to find out that there's in this women's only shelter there's a man living here who is identifying as a woman. So she's raised awareness about those issues as well. And as I said, she does not seem to be backing down at all. So I won't be surprised if she raises her voice on this now, too.
Yeah. And listen, it shouldn't be brave and courageous for someone to just simply say that women or men should not be invited into women's spaces. And that includes sports, that includes bathrooms. And that doesn't mean we don't have compassion for someone who is struggling with the transgender issue. They think they're the opposite sex or whatever the case might be. Both things can be true at the same time. You can have compassion for a person like that, but we can also conduct society in a logical and reasonable way that doesn't cater to an extreme minority and then change around the way we do things and have zero consideration for anyone else except that particular group. It's a little bit of a bizarro world sort of situation we've created. And as a culture, not us, but specifically, but as a culture, we've created that to live in. And hopefully the pendulum is swinging a little bit and we're starting to see more people recognize the, sort of lunacy of some of these positions and just the outright inconsistencies with wanting to help women. And then you turn around and you allow these sorts of things to happen. So it certainly is an issue that is important. And some people will say like, well, why do you keep talking about it? Well, first of all, like you were pointing out with her, Trey, that she's not the one foisting this issue on culture. We're not digging it up out of nowhere. We're reacting to what people are doing and the views that they're trying to force onto us. So, we can navigate that in a way that makes logical sense and biblical sense. The way that God created us and designed us. This is not difficult stuff. But some people want to make it, oh, this is a complicated issue. No, it's not. It's really not. It's actually quite simple. But we'll keep reporting on it because the truth is actually very, very important. We believe that at CBN, and I'm sure you believe that as well. But another crazy twist in the ongoing narratives of the transgender issue, Trey. I appreciate you bringing that one to the podcast today. All right, that's going to lead us into the main thing now. And what was a peaceful protest from some pro-lifers out at the Alamo, just outside the Alamo there in San Antonio, Texas, took a unexpected turn over the weekend when police moved in and arrested several of them on public property. Well, Trey and Raj break down this story and disturbing story on today's main thing.
Now, Raj, this is something we're seeing happening, it seems, with increased frequency, whether it's here at home or abroad. What do you make of this?
Well, the video that you showed a clip of is actually rather long. It's about an hour long. So we got a lot of details. And again, you can watch the video. There's articles about this. So everything I'm about to say is based on what I have seen and what I have read. Are there details that we might be unaware of? Sure, which might change how I view this thing. But from what I see, what I've read, this is absolutely not okay. And I think it's important for all of us to realize that there's a difference between being obnoxious and holding the line, right? I'm pretty surprisingly to some very non-confrontational. Yeah, I'm like, gosh, guys, can't we all just get along? But there does come a point where causing a scene, not for the point of causing a scene, but for holding the line is necessary, because if you look where some of our friends in the Western world have gotten to, namely in Finland, the UK, other places like that, where they let the line be moved. Oh, you can't be a gajillion inches away from a clinic that deletes babies without being arrested, or you're silently praying close to this, aren't you? It's like when you've allowed that line to be crossed, it will continue to be pushed back farther and farther, and the stripping of your liberties that are God given will be given away. Listen, we have to understand what the Constitution is, and we have to understand human rights. Food, medication, all these things are great, but they're not inalienable human rights. Those are things that the government are giving to you. What human rights really are, and our the Bill of Rights, are what the government can't do. You may not take away my right to freedom of speech, or to practice my religion, or to peaceful assembly, or to the right to bear arms. You may not do that. And I think that's important. We need to be very aware of what the Constitution of the United States says, and then hold that line. And you might say, well, do we have to, like, can we just like bend a little bit? No, no, because if you see where this goes, it's not good. So let's read the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of a religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Now, again, I don't know everything that happened in this specific case, and I think for a lot of people, it's like, oh gosh, do you have to wave signs next to the Alamo? That's all secondary to the idea of, here's police officers in the United States of America arresting people who, from our vantage point, are not breaking the law, are peacefully assembling. They're not using bullhorns. They're just practicing the right of freedom of speech. And if that's all that's happening, again, I could be missing other details. That is not okay, and we must hold the line, Trey.
Yeah, well, Raj, actually, the full video, we only showed y'all a clip there, but the full video is really almost 2 hours. It's an hour and 40 minutes and some odd seconds. I'm not sure. So, but yes, I think you're absolutely right. There are things, like as journalists, it's important to note there are things that may have happened before the stream started, and things that may have happened after the stream ended, and then things that got lost in translation in a video stream that we don't necessarily have every single detail of a situation, given that neither you or I were there in person. But based on the breadth of information we have, almost 2 hours, it's a pretty long live stream that gives you a good bit of context. It appears like they may have a case of a First Amendment violation here. So it appeared in the video that officers were arresting anyone, according to some of the confrontation and conversation that Grisham, the attorney, had with several of the different officers there on the ground, that anyone who didn't remain in the so-called designated free speech zone, which is a round circle space somewhere on the Alamo property, which again is public property, somewhere on that property, they're allowed to practice their free speech rights within that small circle. But anywhere else on the public property, apparently they're not allowed to practice those rights to free speech when it comes to the issue of life, of abortion. So the protesters who refused to leave, Raj, that public property as a whole, and didn't then either leave or go to that round space that I just mentioned, they were arrested, charged with Class B misdemeanors for criminal trespass, which is an odd charge given, again, this is public property. and then they were, based on the live stream, loaded into a large police vehicle after being handcuffed, and then they were taken away. So the misdemeanor charge, each one carries with it a $2,000 fine and or up to 6 months in jail. So Grisham, the attorney, said throughout the video that the next step is, of course, to get the charges dropped, and then also potentially to take this to the court. He said that throughout the live stream that he plans to take this all the way up the legal rungs of the ladder if necessary. So anyway, it's a crazy story, and one that, at least at face value, looks like they've got a solid case against against the police for a First Amendment violation. But Raj, I'll give you the final thoughts here.
Well, again, this is one of those things where it might not seem like a big deal, but I think it's important for us to realize what's happening in Europe, where people are being arrested for Facebook posts, tweets, being too close to a building, and literally praying in your head. I wish I was kidding. For posting for passing out pamphlets that talk about biblical sexuality, like, what? And so if that's where Europe has gone, I don't think we quite appreciate here in the United States how much the world looks to us. When you travel around the world, when it comes to military, or when it comes to the economy or culture, everyone, let alone rights, people are like, well, what are you guys doing? Like, we're watching you. And so I do think that something that seems small, that seems like whatever, like they kind of went a little obnoxious. These are the things you have to keep your eye on, because simply this, again, I don't know all the details, but holding the line is absolutely vital to protect these very rare and precious rights that are actually the minority, are actually the exception throughout most of human history. We're living in a very blessed and privileged time when it comes to rights. So we have to make sure that we're doing everything to never lose them.
All right, guys, appreciate you breaking that one down. And that's a disturbing thing that's happening in San Antonio out near the Alamo. That is, I've seen other anti-abortion groups out there, Christians who are out there protesting against abortion and standing up for the unborn. And the same thing happens to them. If they don't stand up and know their First Amendment rights and you get confused, these police will come over there with full confidence that they're allowed to arrest you. And most cases, they are absolutely not. That's a First Amendment violation. So we'll see how that one pans out. But appreciate you breaking it down on the podcast today. And that's going to leave us with time for one last thing. We're going to take a look at Matthew 5:10. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Couldn't help but think of that verse, Trey, when you see something like this, people standing up for God's image bearers in the womb, and they're getting arrested for it.
Yeah, for sure. It reminds me of, I was reading the other day in my quiet time in Romans 5, and it says we can rejoice when we run into problems because that produces endurance, and endurance develops character. And this verse just reminded me of that, because I think as Christians, we can have hope going through the trials we go through and the persecution we may face, because we know God is faithful and he'll give us what we need.
Amen. Good thought to leave it on here as we wrap up this edition of the Quick Start Podcast. Make sure you're getting over to cbnnews.com every day, faithwire.com as well, for more news from a Christian perspective. God bless. See you back here tomorrow.